Andrew, I'm tired of you and your idle life. You don't work, you live in my apartment, and you just eat up our money. And what about your son? You don't even take care of him. At least, that's what you're good for.
I understand your concern, but I'm really trying to get a job. It's not the best job market right now, and I'm looking for opportunities. I don't want to be a burden on my wife and you.
Excuses. You're just lazy, and you're not doing anything to change your situation. Why don't you take responsibility for your life? We can't support you and your child.
I understand your frustration, but I'm really trying. It's not as easy as it sounds. I take care of my son, even though I can't always provide everything he needs. You are greatly exaggerating.
You're getting on my nerves with your empty words. Love and care don't pay the bills, Andrew. You have to get a job and provide for your family. Until you can do that, I don't want you here.
I understand your annoyance, and I agree that I need to try harder. I will look for any job to support my family. I promise that I will do everything I can to change my situation.
I hope these are not empty promises, because I can no longer tolerate your laziness and inaction. How only your daughter puts up with you, such a lowlife.
A year ago, I had an unfortunate situation at work. I was laid off, and it was a big blow to me and my family. We couldn't afford to pay the rent on our rental apartment, and we had to make the decision to move in with my mother-in-law. This was a temporary decision so that we could temporarily save money, and I could concentrate on finding a new job. Since then, I've been working hard to find a new job. I've been sending out resumes, interviewing, and looking for opportunities in different fields. But now the situation in the labor market is difficult, and the competition is very high. It is not always possible to find a suitable job right away. I do not want to just take the first job that comes along with a low salary. I dream about a prestigious job that matches my skills and experience. I want to feel confident and satisfied with my job. I understand that this may seem finicky or unreasonable, but it is important to me. I want to be able to provide my family with a decent standard of living and a future. My wife and child deserve the best. It's hard for me to face financial hardship and disappointment every day, but I can't afford to lower the bar. My wife made a tremendous effort to support us through that difficult situation. She worked in a beauty salon and tried to make the most of her skills and opportunities. But she also had her hands full taking care of our young child and helping her mother. My mother-in-law, I was proud of her strength and perseverance. She would get up early to have time to take care of the baby and help my mother-in-law, and then go to work to earn money for our family. I could see how tired she was every day, but she didn't give up. She did everything she could to support us financially and make time for our child. I knew it was very hard for her, and I wanted to do everything I could to share the responsibility with her. Even though my job at the time was to find a job, I tried to be there for her and help as much as I could. I spent time with the baby when I could, taking care of his needs so my wife could get some rest and relaxation. Every time I hear my mother-in-law tell my wife that she warned her not to marry me because I was lazy, it makes me angry and hate myself. I know she sees me as I am now, unemployed and temporarily living with her, but I don't agree with that assessment. I realize that I'm not at the top of my career right now, but that doesn't mean I'm lazy. I continue to look for work, improve my skills, and strive for a better life for our family. It takes time and effort, and I'm not going to give up. My wife sees my efforts and supports me, and I'm grateful for that. I know she believes in me and knows I can accomplish more. I don't want my wife to feel like a disconnect between her mom and me. I know she loves her mother and wants to respect her opinion, but she also loves me and supports me in our efforts. But sometimes she still gives in to my mother-in-law's provocations and snapping at me over every little thing. It creates a tense situation between us. We also have no privacy due to the fact that we live in a small apartment with my mother-in-law. She constantly interferes in our personal space, and it creates tension and discomfort.
I'm honestly tired of it all. We don't have a place where we can enjoy moments together, be alone. It seems like my mom is always around, watching our every move.
I understand you, but we need to be patient. I'll find a job soon, and we can move out.
How much patience can we have? I've been hearing be patient for a year now. How much longer do I have to wait for your magical job? A year, 2 years, 5 years.
I can see that you're not in the mood. I'd better go to bed, and you go to bed. I've just been getting tired of the constant scandals from my mother-in-law lately. These endless complaints and criticisms were creating tension in our family and were only making our situation worse. I was also aware that my mother-in-law was suffering from health problems, and this made her more irritable. When I even raised my voice a little bit in front of her, she would clutch her heart and almost fall out of her chair. At first, I was really worried about her, but I soon noticed that she only got sick when her daughter was around. When my wife was away, she was fine in these situations, acting like an angry dog and just thinking about how to bite me and hurt me.
Maybe if you weren't so lazy and didn't refuse any low-paying job, you would have found some work long ago.
You don't understand that I don't want to take a job that doesn't match my qualifications and experience. I want to find a job that values my skills and pays accordingly.
Oh, how arrogant you are. You think you're so uniquely qualified that only a prestigious job is right for you. Wake up, Andrew. There are a lot of people in this world working in low-paying jobs, but at least they're doing something. And you're just comfortable living on my pension and eating on your wife's hard-earned money. She works hard from morning till night and has time to help out around the house.
That's just your personal opinion. I don't want to listen to it. You'll drive me crazy soon enough.
My daughter is great. She could have done a lot more if it weren't for you and your problems. You're standing in her way of success.
I don't stand in the way of her success. I always support her. Stop throwing your reasoning at me.
Oh, how sensitive you are. I've always told my daughter that she deserves a better partner. I can't understand why she chose you.
Instead of comparing me to someone else, try looking at yourself first. You survived your husband, now you're hitting on me.
Well, maybe if you were a real man, you'd have more success. But I doubt you have the courage to change anything. And don't you dare say that about my husband. Don't even think about it.
My mother-in-law continued to turn my wife against me, taking every opportunity to emphasize my shortcomings. She told her about Jacob, her first love, who, she said, was now running his own firm and making good money. My mother-in-law assured my wife that I was just a slacker who did nothing but sit at home. She constantly reminded my wife that she had warned her not to marry me because I would never be able to provide them with a good life. In her eyes, I was just a drag and a loser. My mother-in-law assured me that I was not worthy of my wife and that she deserved someone better. She instilled in her doubts and insecurities about our marriage, constantly creating tension between us. One day, once again, a scandal erupted between me and my mother-in-law. She began to sneer, saying that I would never be able to provide for my family, that I was a total loser. Her words pierced my heart, but this time I decided not to keep quiet. Exhausted by these constant insults and sarcastic comments, I could no longer contain my emotions. I told her that I could no longer live in that house where I was constantly humiliated and mocked. I told her I was leaving. My mother-in-law suddenly became silent. Surprise reflected on her face. She smirked and watched to see what would happen next. My wife, who had been silent all this time, looked at me with mixed feelings. She was torn between her mother and me. But it was clear that she was tired of this incessant hostility. Without a word, I took a few things, packed them up, and left this house that had become a source of pain and hatred. I didn't know where I would live or how I would cope financially, but I knew that leaving was my only option. As I left, I knew it was the last act of my opposition. I hoped that in the future we would find a way to reconcile and rebuild our family. I started calling my friends, hoping that someone would be able to help me and provide shelter for a while. But unfortunately, everyone was busy or had no way to accommodate me. And so, as my hope began to fade, one of my friends answered my call. He informed me that he had a second empty apartment where his sister, Maya, was currently living temporarily. He offered me the opportunity to live there temporarily. While I knew that a temporary home with a friend would not be a long-term solution, it was a breath of hope and a chance to start fresh. Even though Maya was my first love, the idea of living temporarily with her in an apartment was somewhat exciting and unsettling. However, I knew I had no other choice. When I first entered the apartment, Maya was there, waiting for me. Her eyes lit up with joy when she saw me. She rushed toward me and hugged me hard. Her greeting was sincere, and I was glad to see her again. However, although Maya was expressing her joy, I felt tension within me. I was cautious and didn't want any trouble or unpleasantness. Maya offered me something to eat, noting that I was probably hungry after all the fuss. I couldn't refuse her kindness, so I agreed. We sat down at the table and started talking, and the aroma of food filled the kitchen. As we dined, our conversation turned to memories of the past. We began to reminisce about the times when we were younger and in love. As we told each other stories and jokes, our faces came alive with smiles and nostalgia. Maya remembered how we spent our days together walking in the parks, how the first kiss happened, and how exciting it was. She said that all of these memories are part of our history. I agreed with Maya and shared my own memories of those moments that were especially meaningful to me. We smiled and laughed as we recalled past adventures and ridiculous things that made our lives more vivid. I went to bed, but I couldn't settle down. My thoughts ran through the complicated situation in our family. I thought about how much I had loved Mia during those years, about how happy we had been together. Feelings that seemed long lost were beginning to return, and it scared me. I worried that these feelings might confuse me and add more complications to our already tense situation. I had a child, and I felt responsible for him and his future. I didn't want to mess with his little head and create more chaos in his life. Despite these concerns, however, I could not deny that past feelings for Mia were beginning to awaken. All those moments of happiness and intimacy we had shared together were slowly beginning to cast a shadow over my thoughts. Maya hadn't changed much, still the same petite, gentle, and sexy woman she was 6 years ago. I noticed that she still felt something for me. That night, she wore a miniature robe and kept coming into my room. I understood her hints, but I didn't dare ruin my life. After all, I have a family and I should not betray it. Maya showed noticeable attention to me, caring about my well-being. She tried to create a comfortable atmosphere in her apartment and listened carefully to my worries. I couldn't help but notice how caring and attentive she was to every detail. Maya cooked delicious meals that not only satisfied hunger, but also filled the soul with warmth and care. We spent time together discussing different topics and sharing our thoughts and emotions. I felt that Maya sincerely wanted to help me through difficult times. However, even as I began to enjoy this caring attention, I did not forget about my family. On a regular basis, I visited my wife and child, helping them in any way I could. Despite our differences, I understood that they were still my family, and I could not give up my responsibilities. My wife was finally fed up with all the endless excitement and chaos that accompanied our married life. She became enraged and issued an ultimatum: return home or get a divorce. Frankly, I wasn't surprised by her reaction. She was exhausted from the constant scandals and tension. However, even when she softened and tried to persuade me to return to the family, I could not agree to it. I realized that going back to the apartment where all the problems had started would not lead to a solution to these problems. I could no longer just tolerate and pretend that everything was okay. Maya was very understanding and supportive. When I told her about my problems with my wife and my difficulty finding a job, she was immediately interested and offered me a position with her company. She worked at a fairly large firm and knew that they had an open position that might be a good fit for me. However, she said that she needed to wait a little while so that she could talk to her superiors and negotiate the possibility of offering me the job. I was pleasantly surprised by her offer and grateful for her help. Days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months, but I still couldn't find the right job. Every time I asked Maya about a job, she regretfully replied that she had not yet been able to reach an agreement with her supervisor or that other reasons had arisen that delayed the process. My impatience and frustration only grew with each passing day. I saw time running out and felt like I was missing out on opportunities that could have helped me get back on my feet and provide for my family. Maya understood my frustration and regretted that she couldn't solve all the problems instantly. She kept explaining that some things take time and patience, especially when it comes to business contacts and opportunities. But I felt more and more in a vicious circle where nothing was changing. One day, I decided to drive over to my wife's apartment to my mother-in-law's house to talk to her and try to establish communication. I went into the house and heard a man's voice. I wondered who could have come to visit my mother-in-law, or my wife. However, when I approached her, I saw that she was having tea with the very man my mother-in-law had mentioned to me. My heart clenched in discomfort and anger swept over me. I could not stand the situation and did not give my wife a chance to explain herself. My emotions were running high and I just walked away without listening to what she had to say. I was disappointed and hurt. It seemed to me that all my efforts, all my attempts to keep our family together were pointless. Different feelings raged inside me, mixed emotions, vague thoughts about the future. I was aware that this decision could change my life forever. I arrived at Maya's house and pounced on her. Yes, I had cheated on my wife. I did it on emotion. I tried all along to resist Mia's temptations. She hinted many times about something intimate, but I turned it all into a joke. I had been faithful to my wife until the last moment, but the incident with Jacob drove me completely out of my mind. We were fine with Maya for a while, but I still couldn't believe this was happening to me. What about my family and what would happen to the baby? I tried not to think about it and move on with my life. I woke up one morning to the voices of Maya talking. Her voice sounded quiet, but I could still make out some of the phrases. And then I heard something that shocked me. Maya was talking to someone on the phone, and her words pierced my heart. She was admitting that she specifically did not want me to find a job so that I would stay with her. I was stunned and devastated by this discovery. I went over to hear her explain, and she bluntly told me that she still loved me to this day, and she would do everything in her power to have me with her. The doorbell rang unexpectedly, and Maya went to open it. I felt confused and somewhat anxious, not knowing that my wife might have come in here. She probably wanted to talk to me and deal with the situation at her mother-in-law's apartment. However, when she saw Maya, her face contorted with resentment and disappointment. I realized that our marital situation was only getting more complicated, and I couldn't predict how things would unfold. Without saying a word, my wife turned around and walked away. I was left standing there feeling torn between two worlds. My heart clenched in pain, realizing that I had destroyed not only our marriage, but also the dashed hopes of rebuilding our family. I understood that the situation was getting more complicated and there were no easy solutions. My life with Maya was an illusion, and there was no way I could ignore the fact that I still loved my wife and longed to rebuild our family. It had been 2 years since I had made the decision to leave Maya and start fresh. During that time, I found a job in my hometown and was slowly getting my life together. Suddenly, one day, my wife asked to talk to me. I felt that the past had finally given way to new opportunities, and I gladly agreed, It turned out that Jacob had come that day at my mother-in-law's request, and she had set up their meeting. My mother-in-law wanted to get them together. So I showed up at the worst possible moment. My wife forgave me for cheating. We moved into a new apartment, and every day our relationship grew stronger. We both realized that neither of us were perfect and mistakes had been made, but we were willing to work on our marriage. My wife and I have overcome many difficulties, and I can't help but mention our indefatigable mother-in-law, who still tries to ruin our lives. But we have learned to ignore her provocations and not let her interfere with our happiness.